In a small but vibrant neighborhood, 8-year-old Mia and her mother Angela lived in an apartment that was modest but filled with warmth. It was a space where love thrived, where the walls were adorned with Mia's colorful artwork, and the air was often filled with the comforting aroma of Angela's home-cooked meals. Despite the challenges of single parenthood, Angela had built a home where her daughter felt safe, secure, and surrounded by affection. Mia was an extraordinary child, full of energy, curiosity, and an unyielding kindness that Angela cherished deeply. Her smile was infectious, and her generous heart meant she always saw the good in others. Whether it was helping a classmate at school or sharing her toys with neighborhood children, Mia's compassion knew no bounds. She had a way of making everyone around her feel special. One crisp afternoon after school, Mia decided to visit the park near their apartment. It was her favorite spot, a small but peaceful area with trees that rustled gently in the breeze and swings that soared high into the sky. As always, Mia carried her backpack, inside which was a peanut butter and jelly sandwich her mother had lovingly packed for her. When Mia reached the park, her attention was drawn to a man sitting alone on a bench. His clothes were worn, his face lined with exhaustion, and his eyes seemed distant, as if he were lost in thoughts that weighed heavily on his heart. He was someone Mia hadn't seen in the park before, but instead of feeling wary, she felt something else, a desire to help. Mia, being the kind-hearted child she was, approached the man without hesitation. She could hear her mother's voice in the back of her mind reminding her to be careful around strangers, but her instincts told her that this man wasn't dangerous. He was simply in need. With a shy but friendly smile, she stood in front of him, holding out her sandwich. "Hi," Mia said, her voice soft but confident. "Are you hungry? You can have my sandwich if you'd like." The man looked up at Mia, startled by her generosity. His blue eyes, dulled by fatigue, softened as they met hers. For a moment, he didn't say anything, as if trying to process this unexpected kindness. Then slowly, a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth, a smile that hadn't appeared on his face in a long time. "That's very kind of you," the man said, his voice rough and hoarse. "But are you sure? Don't you need it?" Mia shook her head, her curls bouncing with the movement. "I already ate a big lunch at school," she lied gently, not wanting him to feel bad about taking her food. "My mom always says it's important to share." The man hesitated for another moment before reaching out to accept the sandwich. His hands, calloused and trembling slightly, took the small offering as if it were the most precious gift he had ever received. He unwrapped the sandwich slowly, carefully, and looked at Mia with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "My name's John. What's yours?" "I'm Mia," she replied with a bright smile. "It's nice to meet you, John." John took a small bite of the sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. It was a simple meal, nothing fancy, but to him it was a lifeline. As he ate, Mia sat down beside him on the bench, her small legs swinging back and forth as she watched the other children playing nearby. "Why are you here all by yourself?" Mia asked, her voice full of innocent curiosity. John paused for a moment, swallowing another bite. "Sometimes life doesn't go the way we plan," he said softly, his words heavy with a past he didn't share. "But people like you, kind people, make it a little easier." Mia's heart swelled with a feeling she couldn't quite describe, but it felt good. She had never seen anyone so grateful for something as simple as a sandwich, and the thought that she had helped someone in need made her feel like she had done something important. "You're a special girl, Mia," John said quietly, his eyes now focused on her. "Never lose that kindness in your heart. The world needs more of it." Mia nodded solemnly, not fully understanding his words but knowing they carried weight. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Mia realized it was time to go home. "I have to go now," she said, standing up from the bench. "Will you be okay?" John smiled again, this time a little brighter. "Thanks to you, I'll be just fine," he said. With a final wave, Mia skipped away, her heart light with the joy of having made a difference no matter how small. She couldn't wait to tell her mother about her new friend and the happiness she felt in helping someone who needed it. As she headed home, Mia had no idea that her simple act of kindness would set off a chain of events far beyond anything she could have imagined. Mia burst through the door of their small apartment, her excitement overflowing. "Mom, you won't believe what happened," she exclaimed as she kicked off her shoes, her curls bouncing with the same energy she always brought into the room. Angela, stirring a pot of soup on the stove, turned to greet her daughter with a warm smile. "Hey, sweetheart, you seem excited. What's going on?" Mia could hardly contain herself as she rushed over to the kitchen table, her words tumbling out in a rush. "There was this man at the park. His name is John, and he looked really hungry, so I gave him my sandwich. He smiled at me and said I made his day better." Angela's hands paused over the pot, her motherly instincts immediately alert. Her smile faltered just slightly, though she didn't let Mia notice. "You gave your sandwich to a stranger, Mia?" she asked carefully, her voice calm but edged with concern. Angela had always taught her daughter to be compassionate, but the reality of Mia interacting with a stranger brought out a protective worry in her. Mia, oblivious to her mother's growing concern, nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, he was really nice, Mom. He told me I was special and that I made him happy. He was sitting all alone, and he looked sad, so I thought I should help." Angela sighed, her emotions torn between pride for Mia's kind heart and the nagging fear of what could happen in a world that wasn't always as kind. She walked over to where Mia stood and knelt down in front of her, placing her hands gently on her daughter's small shoulders. "Mia, that was very sweet of you, and I'm proud that you wanted to help," Angela began, her voice soft but firm. "But I need you to understand that it's important to be careful. We don't always know what people are going through, and it's not always safe to approach strangers, especially when I'm not with you." Mia's bright smile faded slightly as she saw the concern in her mother's eyes. "But he wasn't scary, Mom. He was just sad, like he needed someone to be nice to him." Angela's heart ached at the simplicity and purity of her daughter's reasoning. She wished the world was as straightforward as Mia saw it, that a sandwich and a smile could fix everything. But she knew that wasn't always the case. "I know, baby," Angela said, pulling Mia into a hug. "And I'm not saying you shouldn't be kind. I'm just saying we need to make sure you're safe too. Next time you see someone who looks like they need help, promise me you'll come talk to me first, okay? We can figure out how to help them together." Mia nodded against her mother's shoulder, though she didn't fully understand why her kindness would need to be tempered with caution. "I promise, Mom," she said softly, her small hands holding onto Angela, as if to reassure her. Angela smiled as she pulled back, brushing a curl from Mia's face. "Good girl. Now, why don't you help me set the table for dinner?" Mia seemed to brighten again, eager to help as she gathered the plates and utensils, chattering away about how John had smiled at her and how good it felt to make someone happy. Angela listened with a mixture of pride and unease. She couldn't deny how proud she was of her daughter's big heart, but the thought of Mia approaching a stranger in the park gnawed at her. Later that evening, as Mia lay in bed, Angela sat on the edge of the mattress, stroking her daughter's curls. She could see that Mia was still thinking about John, her mind turning over the day's events. "Mom, do you think John will be okay?" Mia asked quietly, her eyes already growing heavy with sleep. Angela paused, considering her words carefully. She didn't want to worry Mia, but she also didn't want to give her false hope. "I hope so, sweetie," she said gently. "Your kindness probably meant more to him than you know. Sometimes when people are going through hard times, even a small act of kindness can make a big difference." Mia nodded sleepily, her eyes fluttering closed. "I just wanted him to feel better," she murmured. Angela leaned down to kiss her daughter's forehead, her heart swelling with love and pride. "And I'm sure you did," she whispered. "You have a very special heart, Mia." With a contented sigh, Mia drifted off to sleep. the worries of the world fading away as she slipped into dreams. Angela stayed by her side for a few moments longer, watching her daughter's peaceful face and feeling the weight of her own thoughts settle in. As she quietly left the room and closed the door behind her, Angela's mind wandered back to John, the man on the park bench. She couldn't help but wonder about his story. What had brought him to that bench? What had happened in his life to leave him so alone, so weary? And more importantly, had Mia's small act of kindness been enough to make a difference? Angela found herself wishing she had the answers, but for now all she could do was hope that wherever John was, he had felt the warmth of Mia's compassion, and that it had given him a little light in his darkest moment. The next morning started just like any other. Sunlight streamed through the curtains of the small apartment as Mia and Angela shared breakfast at the kitchen table. The comforting sound of Angela's spoon clinking against her coffee cup filled the quiet room while Mia, full of energy, munched on her cereal and chatted about her plans for the day. "Can we go to the park again later, Mom?" Mia asked eagerly, her feet swinging back and forth beneath the table. "Maybe we'll see John." Angela hesitated for a moment, her protective instincts flaring. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. Let's see how the day goes, okay?" She smiled at Mia but couldn't shake the lingering concern from the previous day. Mia nodded, her spirits still high. "Okay, maybe I'll bring another sandwich just in case." Angela felt a tug at her heart. She admired her daughter's kindness more than she could express, but the unease she'd felt ever since Mia mentioned John hadn't gone away. She didn't know exactly why it gnawed at her. Maybe it was just the natural worry that came with being a mother, or maybe it was something else, something deeper she couldn't quite put her finger on. Just as Angela was about to clear the table, a knock echoed through their apartment, startling them both. It wasn't the casual knock of a neighbor or a delivery person. It was firm, deliberate, and it sent a chill down Angela's spine. "Who could that be this early?" Angela muttered under her breath as she wiped her hands on a towel. She glanced at Mia, who had frozen mid-bite, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Stay here, Mia. Let me see who it is." Angela walked cautiously to the door, her heart racing a little faster than usual. She peered through the peephole and what she saw made her breath catch in her throat. 2 police officers stood in the hallway, their faces serious and official. Angela's mind raced. She had no reason to believe they were here for anything bad, but seeing officers at her door still made her pulse quicken. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door. "Good morning, ma'am," said the taller officer, his voice polite but firm. "I'm Officer Johnson and this is Officer Rodriguez. Are you Angela Thompson?" Angela nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes, I am. Is something wrong?" "We're here to talk to you and your daughter Mia about an incident that occurred yesterday," Officer Johnson explained. "It's regarding a man she interacted with at the park." A wave of confusion and worry washed over Angela. "An incident? What happened?" she asked, her voice faltering slightly. She instinctively looked back toward Mia, who was still sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes fixed on the officers with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Officer Rodriguez spoke this time, her voice softer but still serious. "May we come in? We can explain more inside." Angela hesitated, glancing down the hallway, but then stepped aside to let them in. "Of course. Please come in." As the officers entered, Angela's mind buzzed with questions. She motioned for Mia to come over and her daughter quickly joined her, looking up at the officers with wide, innocent eyes. "Mia," Angela said gently, "these officers have some questions about what happened at the park yesterday. Just answer them honestly, okay?" Mia nodded, a little apprehensive but trusting her mother. She stood close to Angela, her small hand gripping the hem of her mother's shirt. Officer Rodriguez knelt down to Mia's level, her expression kind. "Hi, Mia. We're here to ask you about the man you met at the park. His name is John, right?" Mia brightened at the mention of John. "Yes, he was really nice. I gave him my sandwich because he looked hungry." Officer Johnson pulled out a small notebook, jotting something down as Mia spoke. "That was very kind of you, Mia," he said. "Can you tell us what John looked like?" Mia furrowed her brow, thinking for a moment. He had gray hair and a beard, and his clothes were kind of dirty. she said honestly. But he was really nice. He smiled at me and told me I made his day better. The officers exchanged a glance, and Angela's worry deepened. Something wasn't right. Why were they so interested in Mia's interaction with John? Was he in trouble? Or worse, had something happened to him? Officer Rodriguez gave Mia a reassuring smile. "You did a good thing, Mia. We just need to know a little more. Did John tell you anything else about himself? Where he was from, or where he was going?" Mia shook her head, her curls bouncing. "No, we just talked about the sandwich. He didn't say anything about where he lived." Angela, unable to hold back her unease any longer, looked at Officer Johnson. "What's this all about? Has something happened to John?" The officers exchanged another look before Officer Johnson cleared his throat. "Ma'am, the man your daughter met yesterday was found unconscious in the park later that evening. He's currently in the hospital." Angela's heart dropped. She felt a rush of cold fear spread through her body. "In the hospital? Is he okay?" "The doctors are doing everything they can," Officer Rodriguez explained gently. "He's stable for now, but they're trying to figure out what happened before he was found. That's why we need to know more about his interaction with your daughter. Mia was the last person to see him before he collapsed." Mia looked up at her mother, her face pale with confusion. "Mommy, is John going to be okay?" Angela knelt down beside her daughter, pulling her close. "I hope so, baby," she whispered, her heart heavy with worry. As the officers continued to ask a few more questions, Angela's mind raced. What had happened to John after Mia left the park? Had he been sick, or was something else at play? The sense of dread that had been lingering since the knock on the door now settled heavily in her chest. Once the officers finished their questioning, they thanked Angela and Mia for their cooperation, leaving their contact information in case any new details surfaced. After they left, the apartment felt quieter than usual. Angela sat on the couch with Mia, holding her daughter close, her mind swimming with questions and fears. Mia, for her part, remained silent, her wide eyes staring ahead, trying to process what she had just heard. "Mom," Mia finally whispered, breaking the silence. "Did I do something wrong?" Angela hugged her daughter tightly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "No, sweetheart, you didn't do anything wrong. You were kind, and that's never the wrong thing to do." But as Angela reassured her daughter, her own worries refused to fade. Something had happened to John, and whether it was related to Mia's kindness or not, she couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were about to change in ways neither of them could predict. The atmosphere in the apartment remained tense after the police officers left. Mia, usually so full of energy, sat quietly on the couch, clearly still processing everything that had happened. Angela, though trying to stay calm for her daughter's sake, couldn't help but feel a deep, lingering unease about the situation. "Mom," Mia asked after a long silence, "why did the police come? Did something bad happen because I gave John my sandwich?" Angela sighed, sitting beside her daughter and pulling her close. She stroked Mia's curls, trying to find the right words to explain the situation. "No, sweetheart. Nothing bad happened because of your kindness," she said softly. "Sometimes when people are sick or going through hard times, they need help from more than one person. You helped John by giving him your sandwich, and now the doctors are helping him get better. The police just needed to make sure they knew what happened so they can take care of him." Mia looked up at her mother, her wide eyes full of confusion. "But why did John get sick after I helped him?" Angela paused, her heart aching at Mia's innocence. "I don't know, sweetie," she said gently, "but what's important is that you did something kind for him. You didn't do anything wrong." Mia nodded slowly, still uncertain, but trusting her mother's reassurance. Angela kissed her daughter's forehead, hoping her words would help ease some of the worry that had settled over Mia since the officer's visit. The next morning, Angela tried to put the events behind them, focusing instead on their daily routine. She and Mia went about their usual activities: breakfast, school, drop-off, work. But that undercurrent of anxiety lingered in Angela's chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that things were far from resolved. Later that afternoon, as Angela walked back to their apartment after picking up Mia from school, she noticed something different. The familiar warmth of their close-knit community felt a little colder, and the friendly faces they usually saw on their way home now seemed more curious than welcoming. Whispers followed them as they passed neighbors on the sidewalk, and Angela could feel eyes watching them, not with the usual casual familiarity, but with something more cautious. "Is everything okay, Mom?" Mia asked as she held her mother's hand, her voice small and uncertain. Angela forced a smile, not wanting Mia to worry. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," she said, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Let's get home." But the whispers didn't stop. As they passed Mrs. Gonzalez, an elderly neighbor who always greeted them with warmth, Angela noticed the woman's gaze linger on them a little too long before she looked away and hurried inside. Angela's stomach twisted. She tried to brush off the feeling, but when they entered the corner store to pick up a few things for dinner, Mr. Chun, the store owner, gave them the same concerned look. "Angela," he said gently as she paid for their groceries, "I heard about the police coming by yesterday. Is everything all right?" Angela hesitated, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't expected the news to spread so quickly. Their neighborhood was small, but she hadn't realized how fast word would travel. "Everything's fine," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "It was just a misunderstanding. They had some questions about a man Mia met in the park." Mr. Chun raised an eyebrow but nodded slowly. "Well, if you need anything, you know we're here." Angela smiled tightly, appreciating his concern, but wishing the whole thing would just blow over. She could feel the weight of the whispers and the curious looks, and it unsettled her. As they walked out of the store, she overheard someone behind her murmur something about dangerous strangers and kids getting too close. Her heart sank. Back at their apartment, Angela tried to focus on making dinner, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. The whispers, the looks. It was like a storm brewing in the background, and she had no idea how bad it would get. Later that evening, after dinner, Angela and Mia decided to take a short walk to the small playground nearby. It had always been a place of comfort for both of them, a space where Mia could run and play and Angela could sit and relax, watching her daughter's joy. But today, even the playground felt different. As Mia ran toward the swings, Angela noticed a group of neighborhood mothers standing nearby, talking quietly among themselves. Normally, she would have joined them, exchanging pleasantries or discussing school events, but today their voices were hushed. Every now and then, they glanced in her direction. Angela clenched her fists at her sides, feeling her irritation flare. She tried to ignore them, focusing instead on Mia, who was happily swinging as if nothing in the world could bring her down. But the murmurs continued, and when one of the women, Sarah, a PTA member Angela had spoken to at length during school meetings, approached her, Angela's frustration boiled over. "Hey, Angela," Sarah said, her voice carrying a tone that was both friendly and laced with underlying concern. "I heard about the police at your place. Is everything all right?" Angela took a deep breath, trying to keep her voice even. "Yes, everything's fine. The police had some questions about a man Mia met in the park. It's nothing serious." Sarah nodded slowly but didn't look entirely convinced. "It's just that, with strangers and everything. You might want to be more careful. We wouldn't want the kids getting mixed up with the wrong kind of people." Angela's irritation flared into anger. She knew Sarah probably didn't mean to offend her, but the comment stung. The implication that Mia's kindness could lead to trouble, that her act of generosity toward John was somehow irresponsible. It was too much. "Thank you for your concern," Angela said, her voice tight. But Mia did nothing wrong. She was just trying to help someone who needed it. Sarah looked slightly taken aback by Angela's firm tone. "Of course, Angela didn't let her finish. "Have a good evening, Sarah," she said, turning her back and walking over to the swings where Mia was still playing, blissfully unaware of the tension. As Angela pushed Mia on the swing, her frustration simmered. She had always prided herself on being part of this community, on being a good mother who raised her daughter with the values of kindness and empathy. But now it felt like those very values were being questioned, as if her daughter's goodness was somehow a risk instead of a gift. That night, after Mia had gone to bed, Angela sat in the quiet of the living room, her thoughts racing. The whispers, the judgment from the neighbors, it all weighed heavily on her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening, that Mia's simple act of kindness had set off a chain of events she wasn't prepared for. And in the back of her mind, one question loomed larger than all the others. What had really happened to John? The tension from the whispers in the neighborhood continued to linger in the days that followed. Angela did her best to keep things normal for Mia, but the unease remained, like a weight pressing down on her chest. Mia, thankfully, seemed to bounce back quickly, though every now and then she'd ask about John, her voice filled with genuine concern. "Mommy, do you think John is okay now?" Mia asked one afternoon as she worked on a drawing at the kitchen table. Angela paused from her cleaning, glancing over at her daughter. She had no answers, but she hated that she couldn't give Mia the reassurance she wanted. "I hope so, sweetie. The doctors are helping him and we'll just have to wait and see." Mia nodded thoughtfully, though the uncertainty in her young face made Angela's heart ache. It wasn't right for a child to be so worried about things she couldn't control. Mia had done nothing but show kindness, yet here they were, caught in a situation far beyond anything Angela had anticipated. The following week, just as Angela was beginning to think the situation might settle, there came another knock on their door. It was late afternoon, and the golden sunlight was casting long shadows through the windows. Mia was in her room, playing quietly with her toys, while Angela was finishing up some household chores. When she heard the knock, her pulse quickened, a reflex that had developed ever since the police had first visited. She walked to the door, cautiously looking through the peephole. To her surprise, it wasn't the police this time. Standing in the hallway was a tall man in a suit and an older woman dressed in elegant but modest clothes. Angela couldn't place them, but something about the way they held themselves suggested they weren't here for a casual visit. Feeling a flicker of apprehension, Angela opened the door. "Good afternoon," the man said politely, his tone formal but friendly. "My name is Edward Caldwell, and this is my wife, Catherine. We've come to speak with you and your daughter, if that's all right." Angela's mind raced. The name Caldwell sounded familiar, but she couldn't immediately place it. Then, with a sudden jolt, she remembered. The officers had mentioned that Jonathan, wasn't just a man living in the park. He had a family, a background she couldn't have guessed from his appearance that day. Her heart began to pound. "Of course," Angela said, trying to keep her voice steady. She stepped aside to let them in. "Please come in." As the couple entered, Angela felt a nervous energy spread through her. She hadn't expected to meet Jonathan's family. What did they want? Were they here to accuse her of something? Was there more about John's condition that she didn't know? Catherine smiled kindly at Angela as they all settled into the living room. "Thank you for seeing us," she said, her voice warm and gentle. "I know this must be unexpected, but we've come to thank you and your daughter for what you've done." Angela blinked in surprise. "Thank us?" "Yes," Edward said, his expression serious but filled with gratitude. "You may not know the full story, but our son, Jonathan, had been missing for over a year before your daughter found him." Angela's breath caught in her throat. Missing for over a year. She couldn't imagine what that must have been like for them. All this time, she had thought John was just a man down on his luck, but now, hearing this, the weight of his situation began to sink in. "Your daughter's kindness was the spark that brought him back to us," Catherine continued, her eyes shining with emotion. "We had lost hope of ever finding him, but that simple act, a sandwich, a kind word, it did more for him than we could have imagined. It helped him remember." Angela felt her throat tighten with emotion. She glanced toward Mia's room, knowing that her daughter had no idea the impact she had made. She had acted out of pure compassion, never expecting anything in return. And yet, she had changed the course of someone's life. Angela struggled to find the words. I didn't know. Mia just wanted to help. She didn't think it would. She didn't know it would mean all this. Edward smiled softly. That's the beauty of it, isn't it? She wasn't looking for praise or recognition. She just saw a person in need and acted with kindness. That's something rare in this world. Angela nodded, still processing the enormity of the situation. How is Jonathan now? The police said he was in the hospital. Catherine's smile faltered slightly, though it remained kind. He's doing much better now, thanks to the medical care he's receiving. But the road to recovery will be a long one. His memory is coming back in pieces, and it's a process that will take time. But thanks to Mia, we've been able to reunite with him. At that moment, Mia came into the room, unaware of the visitors at first. Her eyes lit up when she saw Angela, but then her gaze shifted to Edward and Catherine, curiosity flickering in her expression. Mommy, who are they? Mia asked, walking over to her mother's side. Angela smiled gently, placing a hand on Mia's shoulder. Mia, this is Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell. They're Jonathan's parents. You remember John from the park, right? Mia's eyes widened, her face brightening with recognition. John, is he okay? Catherine knelt down so she was at eye level with Mia. Thanks to you, he's doing much better, she said, her voice filled with warmth. You helped bring him back to us, Mia. Your kindness did something very special. Mia blinked, her expression one of surprise and curiosity. I just gave him my sandwich. Catherine's eyes welled up with tears. It was much more than that, darling, it was hope. Mia smiled shyly, still not fully understanding but feeling the weight of Catherine's gratitude. I'm glad he's okay, she said softly. Edward stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Mia, we want to thank you properly. We'd like to invite you and your mother to visit us to meet Jonathan when he's ready. He'd love to see you again. Mia looked up at Angela, her face bright with excitement. Can we, Mom? Please? Angela hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Of course, we'd be honored. As the Caldwells prepared to leave, Angela walked them to the door, still marveling at how a single act of kindness from her daughter had brought about such an incredible change. It was almost too much to comprehend. But as Mia chatted happily beside her, Angela knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of something far bigger than any of them had expected. After the visit with the Caldwells, Angela felt as though the world around her had shifted in ways she could hardly believe. The idea that Mia's small, innocent gesture had sparked such profound change still left her in awe. The weight of it all had taken days to fully sink in. Jonathan had been missing for over a year, his family lost in uncertainty, and somehow, Mia's simple act of kindness had brought him back. It was the kind of story people read about in books or saw in movies, not something that happened in real life. Mia, for her part, was thrilled at the idea of seeing Jonathan again. She had already started making plans in her head, drawing pictures to give to him when they met. I want to show him that I'm happy he's feeling better, Mia had explained as she worked on her drawings, her little face scrunched up in concentration. Angela had spent the next few days in quiet contemplation, trying to figure out how to prepare for their visit to the Caldwells. They had invited her and Mia to come to their home in New York, a much fancier part of the city than Angela and Mia's neighborhood. Angela had never imagined stepping into that kind of world, but now it seemed inevitable. The day of their visit came sooner than expected. Angela found herself nervously straightening her clothes in front of the mirror, her thoughts racing. Mia, as usual, was bubbling with excitement, practically bouncing as she picked out her favorite yellow dress. The thought of seeing Jonathan again seemed to fill her with boundless energy. Mommy, do you think John will remember me? Mia asked as they got ready to leave, her voice filled with genuine curiosity. Angela smiled, though her nerves still simmered beneath the surface. I'm sure he will, sweetie. How could he forget the girl who helped him when he needed it most? Mia's face lit up, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I hope he likes the pictures I made for him. Angela chuckled softly, amazed at how pure and unclouded Mia's excitement remained, despite the complexity of the situation. I'm sure he'll love them. The taxi ride to the Caldwells' home was a quiet one. As they wove through the bustling streets of the city, Angela couldn't help but feel a strange sense of both pride and apprehension. She had raised Mia to be kind and thoughtful, but never could she have imagined that her daughter's simple act of giving a sandwich to a man in the park would lead them here, to the doorstep of a family whose life had been forever changed by that single moment of compassion. When they arrived at the Caldwells' brownstone, Angela was taken aback by the grandeur of it. The elegant, ivy-covered facade of the house stood tall and stately in the quiet, upscale neighborhood. It was worlds away from the modest apartment she and Mia called home, and for a brief moment, Angela felt out of place. But then she looked down at Mia, who was positively glowing with excitement, and reminded herself that none of this was about appearances. It was about kindness and connection. The door swung open just as they approached, and Catherine Caldwell greeted them with a warm smile, stepping aside to welcome them inside. Angela, Mia, it's so good to see you both, she said warmly. Please come in. Mia practically skipped through the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the grand interior of the house. The entryway was spacious and elegantly decorated, but it felt welcoming, not intimidating. Angela followed, trying to suppress her nerves as Catherine led them further into the home. We're so grateful you could come, Catherine continued, her voice full of sincerity. Jonathan has been asking about Mia non-stop since he started feeling better. As they walked into a sunlit living room, Angela spotted Jonathan sitting on the couch, looking far healthier and more composed than the last time she had seen him. Gone were the worn, ragged clothes and the unkempt appearance. Instead, he looked rested, his face clean-shaven, his eyes brighter. There was still a sense of weariness about him, but it was clear that he had come a long way in his recovery. Mia's face lit up the moment she saw him. "John!" she exclaimed, running toward him with the same enthusiasm she always had. Jonathan, I made you pictures." Jonathan smiled, a wide, genuine smile that lit up his entire face. "Mia," he said, his voice full of warmth as he opened his arms for a hug. "I've been waiting to see you again." Mia beamed as she handed him the drawings she had carefully worked on. "I made these for you to say I'm glad you're feeling better," she explained with all the earnestness a child her age could muster. Jonathan took the pictures, his eyes softening as he looked at them. They were simple, colorful drawings of flowers, animals, and a big smiling sun, but the care and love that had gone into making them was clear. "These are wonderful, Mia," he said sincerely. "I'll treasure them." As Mia settled on the couch next to Jonathan, chatting away about her drawings and her excitement to see him, Angela stood back with Catherine, watching the scene unfold with a mix of awe and relief. She had been so nervous about this visit, unsure of what to expect, but seeing Jonathan healthy and happy, seeing how much Mia's kindness had truly impacted his life, made everything worth it. Edward joined them a few moments later, his smile just as warm as his wife's. "It's good to see you both again," he said as he approached Angela. "Thank you for making the trip." Angela smiled, feeling her nerves ease as she realized how genuine the Caldwells were. "We're happy to be here," she replied. "Mia's been looking forward to this since you invited us." Edward's gaze shifted to where Mia and Jonathan were sitting, chatting like old friends. "She's an extraordinary little girl," he said quietly. "What she did for Jonathan, it's something none of us will ever forget." Angela felt her heart swell with pride. She just wanted to help. She didn't know it would mean all this. "That's what makes it so remarkable," Catherine added, her voice soft. Her kindness was so pure, so selfless. It's the kind of kindness the world needs more of. As the afternoon passed, they spent time talking, sharing stories, and marveling at how a simple act of kindness had brought their two families together in such an unexpected way. Mia remained at the center of it all, her joy and enthusiasm never fading. By the time they were preparing to leave, the bond between the two families felt stronger than ever. Jonathan, now fully engaged in his recovery, promised to keep in touch with Mia, thanking her once again for being the light in his darkest hour. As Angela and Mia walked out of the Caldwell home and back into the busy streets of the city, Angela felt a sense of peace settle over her. Whatever had happened in the past, whatever struggles Jonathan had faced, Mia's kindness had helped him find his way back. And as they made their way home, Angela knew one thing for sure. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of something far greater than they could have ever imagined. As the days passed, Angela and Mia's small acts of kindness became a routine. Every weekend, they packed sandwiches with handwritten notes and headed to the park, giving food to those in need. What started as a simple gesture soon gained attention. People in their neighborhood began to notice what they were doing, and before long a few neighbors approached Angela, asking how they could help. One Saturday morning, as they were preparing the sandwiches in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Angela wiped her hands on a towel and went to answer it, surprised to find Mrs. Gonzalez, their elderly neighbor, standing there with a gentle smile on her face. "Good morning, Angela," Mrs. Gonzalez greeted warmly. "I heard about what you and Mia have been doing, and I wanted to see if I could help." She held up a bag filled with loaves of bread. "I brought some bread for your sandwiches. I thought it might make things easier for you." Angela's heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Gonzalez. That's incredibly kind of you." Mrs. Gonzalez waved it off with a humble smile. "Oh, it's nothing. What you and your daughter are doing. It's inspiring. It's a good thing for the community. I just wanted to be a part of it, even in a small way." As Angela welcomed Mrs. Gonzalez inside, Mia peeked her head out from the kitchen, her face lighting up when she saw their neighbor. "Hi, Mrs. Gonzalez. Are you going to help us make sandwiches?" Mrs. Gonzalez chuckled softly. "Yes, sweet girl. I brought some bread to help out." Mia grinned and rushed over to the kitchen to show her where they were working. As the three of them began preparing the sandwiches together, Angela couldn't help but feel a sense of connection and warmth filling their small apartment. It wasn't just about the sandwiches anymore. It was about building something larger, something that brought people together. Word continued to spread, and more neighbors began to join in. By the following weekend, 2 more people had shown up at their door, offering to contribute food or volunteer their time. Some offered peanut butter, others brought fresh fruit to include with the meals, and some simply came to help assemble the bags. Mia, overjoyed by the growing support, continued to be the driving force behind it all. She eagerly welcomed each person, explaining how important it was to include a kind note in every sandwich. "It's not just about the food," Mia explained one morning as they worked. "It's about making people feel special, like they matter." Angela watched her daughter, marveling at how far this small idea had come. What had begun as one sandwich and one kind word had grown into something more, a ripple effect of kindness that was now touching the lives of many. The people who received the sandwiches always seemed surprised, often commenting on how thoughtful the notes were. Some of them even returned to the park to thank Mia in person, sharing stories about how her small gesture had made their day a little brighter. One man, who Angela remembered seeing often at the park, approached them during their weekend outing. He was older, with gray hair and worn-out clothes, but his eyes were filled with warmth as he spoke. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said softly, holding up the sandwich he had just received. "I've been coming here for weeks now, and every time I see you it makes me feel like someone actually cares. I don't know what I'd do without this." Mia smiled brightly, her eyes full of sincerity. "I'm glad we could help." Angela felt her chest tighten with emotion. Each time she saw someone touched by Mia's kindness, it reminded her that they were doing something important, something that went beyond just feeding people. They were creating a community of care and compassion. The ripple effect wasn't just about the people they were helping in the park. It was about everyone who was getting involved. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers had started offering their help, contributing in small but meaningful ways. It was as though Mia's kindness had unlocked something in the community, reminding people of the importance of helping others. As the weeks went by, Angela and Mia's little project continued to grow. What had started as a weekend tradition of making sandwiches in their kitchen had blossomed into a full-fledged community effort. With each new face that joined them, Angela's heart swelled with pride for her daughter and the movement she had unknowingly started. One evening, after they had finished handing out the sandwiches for the day, Mia looked up at Angela as they walked home, her eyes thoughtful. "Mommy, do you think we can help even more people?" Angela smiled, brushing a stray curl from Mia's face. "I think we already are, sweetie. But if you have more ideas, I'm always ready to listen." Mia's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I was thinking, maybe we could do more than just sandwiches. Maybe we could find other ways to help people who need it, like clothes or toys for kids who don't have any." Angela nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "That's a beautiful idea, Mia. Let's start thinking about how we can make that happen." As they continued their walk home, Angela realized that this journey was far from over. What had started as a simple act of kindness had become something much larger, a movement of compassion, one that was changing lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. The following weeks marked a turning point for Angela and Mia's growing community project. What had once been a small, personal effort to help people in their neighborhood had become something much larger. More and more neighbors started reaching out, eager to get involved, and it wasn't long before word spread beyond their immediate area. One day, as Angela was coming home from work, she was surprised to see two women she didn't recognize standing outside their building, chatting excitedly. As she approached, she overheard them talking about the little girl who was helping people in the park. Angela's heart swelled with pride, realizing that Mia's acts of kindness had become the talk of the town. That evening, after dinner, there was another knock on the door. This time, when Angela opened it, she found a local reporter standing there, a friendly smile on her face. "Good evening," the reporter said, holding out a business card. "My name is Jennifer Brooks, and I work for the local paper. I've been hearing about the incredible work your daughter has been doing in the community, and I'd love to feature her in a story. Could we set up an interview?" Angela felt a mixture of surprise and pride rise up in her chest. She hadn't expected things to escalate this quickly, but the idea of Mia's kindness inspiring others felt like a natural progression. Still, she didn't want to overwhelm her daughter. "I'll have to talk to Mia about it first," Angela said cautiously. "She's a little shy, but I know she'd love to share what she's been doing." The reporter smiled warmly. "Of course, no pressure. I just think her story is something that could inspire a lot of people. We need more good news in the world." Angela nodded, taking the card. "Thank you. I'll talk to her and let you know." That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Angela broached the subject with Mia. "Sweetie, there's a reporter who wants to write a story about what we've been doing with the sandwiches. She thinks it could inspire other people to help too. What do you think?" Mia's eyes widened with surprise. "Really? She wants to write about us?" Angela smiled, brushing a stray curl from Mia's face. "Yes, she does, but only if you're comfortable with it. I know it might feel a little strange to have people asking you questions, but it's a great way to show others how even small acts of kindness can make a big difference." Mia thought for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, she looked up at her mother, her eyes full of determination. "Okay, if it helps other people want to be kind, I'll do it." The next weekend, the reporter came to their apartment, armed with a notebook and a camera. Mia, dressed in her favorite yellow dress, sat beside Angela as they answered questions about how everything had started. The reporter was kind and gentle with Mia, making sure she felt comfortable and understood the impact of her actions. "So, Mia," the reporter asked with a smile, "what made you want to start helping people with sandwiches in the park?" Mia smiled shyly, glancing up at her mother for reassurance before speaking. "I met a man in the park who looked hungry. and I gave him my sandwich," she explained. "It made him really happy, and I wanted to keep doing that for other people who might need help. I just wanted them to feel like they mattered." Jennifer's eyes softened as she listened to Mia's words, clearly touched by the simplicity and sincerity of her answer. "That's beautiful, Mia. You've done something really special." The article ran the following week, and it didn't take long for the word to spread even further. Soon, people from all over the city were reaching out to Angela, asking how they could get involved. Local businesses offered to donate supplies, volunteers signed up to help make sandwiches, and even a local church contacted Angela, offering their space as a hub for organizing the efforts. Angela was both overwhelmed and grateful for the outpouring of support. What had started as a simple gesture of kindness was now becoming a full-fledged movement, and it was clear that this was no longer just about her and Mia. It was about an entire community coming together to help those in need. Mia, though a little shy about the attention, remained at the heart of it all. She continued to write her notes of encouragement for the sandwiches, carefully placing them inside each bag before they were handed out. Even as the project grew, Mia never lost sight of what mattered most to her, making people feel loved, seen, and important. One evening, after a particularly busy day of preparing and distributing food, Angela and Mia sat together on the couch, exhausted but happy. Mia rested her head on her mother's shoulder, her voice soft as she spoke. "Mommy, do you think we'll be able to help everyone who needs it?" Angela smiled, wrapping her arm around Mia and giving her a gentle squeeze. "We may not be able to help everyone, sweetie, but we're doing what we can, and that's what matters." Mia nodded, content with the answer, and soon fell asleep against her mother's side, her small body worn out from the day's work. As Angela sat there in the quiet, listening to the soft sound of her daughter's breathing, she couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. What had begun with one small act of kindness had grown into something much larger, something that was touching lives far beyond what they had ever imagined. And Angela knew, deep in her heart, that this was just the beginning. As Thanksgiving approached, Angela and Mia began discussing ways they could make the holiday special for those who didn't have a place to go. One evening, after dinner, Mia sat at the kitchen table coloring while Angela tidied up. "Mommy," Mia said thoughtfully, "what do people do on Thanksgiving if they don't have a family to be with?" Angela paused, her heart sinking a little at the question. She knew there were many people who would spend the holiday alone, and the thought of it tugged at her heart. "Some people might spend it on their own, sweetie," she said gently. "Or maybe they'll find a shelter or a community dinner to go to." Mia's brow furrowed, and she set down her crayon. "That doesn't seem right," she said, her voice filled with the kind of concern that only a child with a big heart could express. "Everyone should have a family to be with on Thanksgiving." Angela smiled softly, moved by her daughter's empathy. "You're right, sweetie. Everyone deserves to feel like they belong, especially on a day like that." Mia's face brightened as an idea sparked in her mind. "What if we invited people who don't have a family to come have Thanksgiving dinner with us? We could make it a big dinner, and everyone could come and eat together." Angela's heart swelled with pride. She had been thinking of ways to make the holiday special for their community, but Mia's idea was even more beautiful than anything she had come up with. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Mia," Angela said warmly. "Let's make it happen." Over the next few weeks, Angela and Mia worked tirelessly to organize a community Thanksgiving dinner. With the help of local volunteers, businesses, and the ever-growing network of people who had been touched by Mia's kindness, they were able to secure a large space at a local community center. Donations poured in: turkeys, side dishes, desserts, and even decorations to make the place feel festive and warm. Mia, as always, was at the heart of it all. She helped write invitations, decorated the tables, and made sure there was a place for everyone who wanted to join. On the day of the event, the community center was transformed into a cozy, welcoming space. Long tables were set with bright autumn-colored tablecloths, and the smell of roasted turkey and freshly baked pies filled the air. As people began to arrive, Mia greeted each guest with her usual bright smile. There were people of all ages, some who were homeless, others who simply had nowhere else to go for the holiday. Families sat alongside individuals, and everyone was welcomed with open arms. Angela stood back for a moment, watching as Mia made her rounds, offering kind words and hugs to everyone she met. The warmth and joy in the room were palpable, and Angela felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything that had led them to this moment. As dinner was served, the sound of laughter and conversation filled the room. People who had arrived as strangers were now sitting together, sharing stories, passing plates, and forming connections. For many of them, it was the first time in a long while that they felt like they belonged somewhere. At the head of the table, Mia sat with Jonathan and his parents, who had come to show their support for the event. Jonathan, who had come so far since that day in the park, smiled warmly at Mia as they shared a plate of food. "Mia," Jonathan said, his voice soft but filled with admiration, "you've created something really special here. This dinner, it's more than just food. You've given people a reason to feel hopeful again." Mia smiled shyly, glancing down at her plate. "I just wanted everyone to have a family to be with," she said quietly. "Like we do." Jonathan's mother, Catherine, reached across the table and gently squeezed Mia's hand. "You've done something far bigger than that, Mia," she said warmly. "You've created a community, and that's something people will carry with them long after tonight." As the evening wore on and people began to head home, full and happy, Angela and Mia stood by the door, saying goodbye to each guest as they left. The gratitude in their eyes was unmistakable, and more than once, someone stopped to thank them for not just the meal, but for making them feel like they mattered. When the last guest had gone, Mia let out a tired but contented sigh, leaning against Angela's side. "Do you think everyone had a good time, Mommy?" she asked, her eyes drooping with exhaustion. Angela smiled, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "I think you made a lot of people feel loved today, sweetie. You gave them something to be thankful for." Mia beamed, her heart full. As they locked up the community center and made their way home, Angela knew that this was just one of many moments they would share in their journey of kindness. Mia's idea of a Thanksgiving dinner had turned into something much bigger, a reminder that, no matter how big or small, kindness always brought people together. After the success of the Thanksgiving dinner, Angela and Mia's initiative continued to grow in ways they had never imagined. The more people heard about the community efforts, the more they wanted to be involved. Neighbors who had previously watched from afar now began showing up at their door with donations or offers to help, eager to be part of the growing movement of kindness that Mia had started. One cold December morning, as they were preparing sandwiches in the kitchen, Angela received an unexpected phone call. It was from a woman named Laura, who worked for a large charitable organization in the city. Laura had heard about Mia's efforts through word of mouth and was incredibly impressed by how the young girl had managed to inspire a community-wide initiative. "Angela," Laura began, her voice warm and enthusiastic, "I've been following the work that you and your daughter have been doing, and I think it's absolutely incredible. We would love to partner with you to expand your efforts." Angela felt a wave of surprise and excitement rush over her. "Partner with us?" she asked, unsure of what that might entail. "Yes," Laura explained. "We'd like to provide resources, volunteers, and financial support to help you grow your initiative even further. We've seen how much of an impact you've already made in your community, and we believe we can help bring your efforts to more neighborhoods across the city." Angela was taken aback by the offer, her heart racing with the possibilities. Expanding their project on such a large scale wasn't something she had ever considered, but the thought of helping even more people filled her with excitement and hope. She glanced over at Mia, who was busy carefully writing out her notes of kindness to include with each sandwich, and knew that this was an opportunity they couldn't pass up. "That sounds amazing," Angela said, her voice filled with gratitude. "What would we need to do to make that happen?" Laura explained that her organization would work with Angela and Mia to set up multiple locations for food and care package distributions, ensuring that their work reached far beyond their own neighborhood. They would provide the infrastructure and volunteers to help grow the project, all while maintaining the personal touch that had made Mia's effort so special. After discussing the details with Laura, Angela sat down with Mia to tell her the exciting news. "Mia," Angela began with a smile, "I got a call from a woman who works with a big charity in the city. They've heard about what we've been doing, and they want to help us reach even more people." Mia's eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? How will we help more people?" Angela explained the plan, how they would be able to reach other neighborhoods, how more volunteers would join in, and how their little project was about to become something even bigger. But Mia, ever thoughtful, had one question that seemed to matter most. "Will we still get to write notes for everyone?" Angela smiled, brushing a stray curl from Mia's face. "Of course. The notes are what make it special." Mia beamed, her heart full of excitement. "This is so amazing, Mommy. We can help so many more people now." In the weeks that followed, Angela and Mia worked closely with Laura and her organization to plan the expansion. They discussed logistics, figured out how to keep the personal connection alive as the project grew, and organized the first large-scale distribution of meals across the city. It was a lot of work, but Angela and Mia were ready for it. The first event under the new partnership was scheduled for mid-January, and as the day approached, the excitement in the community was palpable. Volunteers from all over the city signed up to help. Businesses donated more supplies than ever before, and people from every corner of the city were eager to contribute to the growing movement of kindness. On the day of the event, Angela and Mia arrived early at the community center, where the first of many distributions would take place. The energy in the room was electric as volunteers busily prepared meals, sorted through care packages, and set up stations to ensure everything ran smoothly. Mia, as always, was right in the middle of it all, writing her notes of kindness and greeting each volunteer with a warm smile. By mid-morning, people from all over the city began arriving, and the distribution was in full swing. Mia moved through the crowd with her usual enthusiasm, handing out sandwiches and care packages, each one accompanied by a personal note of encouragement. The look of gratitude on people's faces made it clear that what Mia had started was making a profound difference in their lives. As the day went on, Angela watched with pride as her daughter continued to spread joy and kindness to everyone she met. What had once been a small, personal project had grown into something far larger than either of them could have ever imagined. Yet at its core, it was still the same. It was still about kindness, about making people feel seen, valued, and cared for. By the end of the day, after the last meal had been handed out and the volunteers began packing up, Mia let out a contented sigh, her eyes tired but happy. "Mommy," she said softly, "do you think we can keep doing this forever?" Angela smiled, pulling her daughter close. "I think we will, sweetie. As long as there are people who need help, we'll keep finding ways to be there for them." Mia nodded, her heart full. "I'm glad." As they left the community center that evening, walking hand in hand through the chilly streets, Angela felt a deep sense of peace. What had started as a single act of kindness had grown into something much bigger, something that would continue to touch the lives of countless people. And as they made their way home, Angela knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. In the weeks following the large-scale event, the partnership between Mia's movement and the charity organization continued to grow. What had once been a neighborhood initiative was now spreading to different parts of the city, with multiple community centers hosting food and care package distributions. The project had gained so much momentum that people from all walks of life were eager to participate, whether by volunteering their time, donating supplies, or simply offering words of encouragement. Mia remained at the heart of it all. Despite the growing scale of the project, she never lost sight of what mattered most: making sure each person felt seen and cared for. Every weekend, she still wrote her notes of kindness, carefully tucking them into the sandwiches and care packages that were distributed across the city. Her personal touch was what made the movement special, and even as it expanded, it was clear that Mia's spirit of generosity was what held it all together. One Saturday, as they prepared for another big event, Angela received a call from Laura. There was a new opportunity on the horizon, one that could take their efforts to an entirely new level. "Angela," Laura began, her voice filled with excitement, "we've been approached by a national charity that wants to feature Mia's story in their campaign. They're offering to help us expand the project even further, not just across the city, but potentially across the country." Angela was stunned. The idea of Mia's kindness reaching people across the country was something she had never anticipated. "That sounds incredible," she said, her voice full of wonder. "How would it work?" Laura explained that the national charity wanted to create a documentary-style feature about Mia's movement, showcasing the impact of her kindness and how it had inspired an entire community. They would also help fund the expansion of the project, allowing them to reach more people than ever before. Angela felt a wave of pride and excitement. Mia's small act of kindness had already grown into something bigger than either of them had imagined, and now it had the potential to reach people across the country. But as excited as she was, Angela knew that the most important thing was making sure Mia was comfortable with the attention. That evening, Angela sat down with Mia to explain the new opportunity. She told her about the national charity's interest in her story and how they wanted to help spread her message of kindness even further. Mia listened carefully, her brow furrowed in thought. "But if we do that," she said slowly, "will we still be able to write notes for everyone? I want people to know that we care about them." Angela smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "Of course, sweetie. No matter how big this gets, we'll always keep it personal. That's what makes it special." Mia nodded, her eyes full of determination. "Okay, if it helps more people feel loved, I think we should do it." In the weeks that followed, the project began to take on a life of its own. The national charity produced a beautiful feature about Mia's movement, showing how her small act of kindness had blossomed into a full-fledged effort to help people in need. The feature touched hearts across the country, and soon donations and offers to help began pouring in from all over. Mia, though shy about the attention, continued to focus on what mattered to her most, spreading kindness, one person at a time. And as the movement grew, so did Mia's determination to make sure that no one was left behind. By the time spring arrived, Mia's initiative had expanded to multiple cities across the country. Community centers, schools, and churches had all joined in, hosting their own food and care package distributions, each one inspired by Mia's simple idea of helping those who needed it most. And yet, despite the size of the project, it still felt personal. Every care package, every meal, and every note was a reminder that kindness had the power to change the world. By the time Mia's movement had spread across the country, Angela found herself reflecting on how far they had come. What had started as a single sandwich given to a man sitting alone in a park had grown into a nationwide movement that was touching thousands of lives. And through it all, Mia had remained as humble and kind-hearted as ever, always focused on making sure that the people they helped felt cared for and valued. One warm afternoon, as they prepared for another event, Mia looked up at Angela, her eyes thoughtful. "Mommy," she said quietly, "do you think we'll be able to help everyone who needs it?" Angela smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Mia's face. "We may not be able to help everyone in the world, sweetie, but we're doing what we can, and that's what matters." Mia nodded, her eyes filled with quiet determination. "I want to keep doing this forever. I want to make sure no one ever feels alone." Angela's heart swelled with pride as she looked at her daughter. Mia's kindness had always been at the center of everything they did, and it was that kindness that had inspired so many others to join in. That evening, after the event, Angela and Mia sat together in the quiet of their living room. The sun had set, and the house was filled with the soft glow of the evening light. Mia rested her head on Angela's shoulder, her small body tired from the day's work, but her heart full of love and purpose. "Mommy," Mia said softly, her voice barely a whisper, "I'm really happy we get to help people. Angela kissed the top of her daughter's head, feeling a deep sense of peace settle over her. "I'm happy too, sweetie. You've done something amazing." As Mia drifted off to sleep, Angela reflected on how far they had come. What had started with a simple act of kindness had grown into something far bigger than she or Mia had ever imagined. And yet, at its core, it was still the same. It was still about love, about making people feel seen, and about spreading kindness wherever they went. And as Angela sat there, holding her sleeping daughter, she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Mia's legacy of kindness would continue to grow, touching lives in ways they couldn't even imagine. Because kindness, no matter how small, always had the power to change the world. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my channel. I work hard on these stories, and your support means a lot to me. Thank you for being part of this journey.